when we think of the language of validity. And sometimes many people feel it's not accessible, or maybe everybody's thinking there is a checklist and we have to just tick the boxes. So for the wider assessment community, because you talk to researchers, policymakers, also students who are going to be assessed in the end, what would stronger validity literacy look like in practice?
Yeah, I think we can get complicated in talking about validity really quickly. And there is a lot to talk about. There's a lot of theoretical debate about terminology and so forth. However, if we think about the fact that tests are used in all aspects of society, everyone has interacted with tests at some level. All around the world, tests are used, right? So to explain to the common person, to the person without psychometric background, what are the important qualities of a test? Validity clearly is the most important quality. So how do we explain that? So saying things like, we have to make sure that the content of the test is appropriate for everybody. They'll understand that. To say that, we need to make sure that using the test score is actually helping decision makers. They could probably understand that too without any psychometric training. But if we start to talk about, the construct measured has to be supported by the nomological network of multiple variables that can contribute to convergent and discriminant evidence, we're going to lose everybody, right? So how do we make the fundamental principles of the qualities of a good test understandable to the general public? I think that's important. I think that is one of the purposes of the Standards for Educational and Psychological Testing that's put out by AEA, APA, and NCME. Not everyone agrees with that. Some people think that document should just speak to the measurement community, to the psychometric community, and I think we have an educational function. So I think that's the challenge. I think we need to make the fundamental measurement properties in accessible language for people to understand, particularly policymakers and others that are using tests for specific purposes. What are the characteristics of a good test that we can say we can justify the use of this test because it's measuring what it says it's measuring, and it's displaying the types of relationships with other variables that we'd expect, and so forth. So on the one hand, we can have a lot of fun talking about multi-trait, multi-matrix matrices and convergent validity and differential predictive validity, all the things that are important. But that's our subspecialty, and we need to educate people working in measurement with that. But at the same time, and probably more importantly, we need to be able to communicate in a language people will understand the more fundamental concepts that will help informed test users and informed test consumers.
Yeah. So many different audiences that are at the end using those tests, and they need to understand that. So in the conference, you will have researchers mainly in AEA Europe conference, but you have policymakers, assessment providers, practitioners, educators. And when they leave your keynote in Rome, what is the one question or the shift in thinking that you hope they will carry back in their own assessment work? What will we learn one thing from you?
First of all, I've been to AEA Europe once before, and it is just a great conference. I think it's just a great mix of researchers and policymakers and practitioners, like you said. For me, I think what I'd like people to walk away with is, we can really get caught up in and have a lot of fun with validity theory. But the idea that we should be focusing on, just confirming what a test is measuring is the most important thing, is not. The most important thing is certainly that's clearly part of validation, right? We have to demonstrate that we're measuring what we think we're measuring. But more importantly, we have to focus on justifying test use. So validation really requires us to not just satisfy the psychometricians that we're measuring what we think we're measuring, but to demonstrate to society that the use of the test scores is serving a valuable function, and that tests are operating in the way that we intend. And if people are using it for other purposes, that those purposes also are supported by validity evidence. So my message for people, when they walk in, it's like, what? We really need to justify the way we're using test scores based on validity evidence. And in educational testing, a lot of the money goes into developing administering and reporting test scores.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to also ensure that we've got the money and the time and the resources developed to provide validity evidence.
Using data to measure everything that way, using data to inform whatever we're doing with that. Yeah. Well, thank you for giving us this preview, and we look forward to continuing the conversation when you join us at the conference in Rome, where you will invite us to reconsider everything that you've said and everything that we're doing in validity and educational measurement, and what practice requires and what are the stakes, what is the stakes for all of us that use those assessments. So thank you very much for joining us, and see you in Rome.
Grazie, ciao.